Case 1. Sydney Loof was a young woman from Nebraska who cared deeply about her family, her pets, and the people around her. She worked at a home store in Lincoln and enjoyed simple things, like talking with friends and spending time with loved ones. On November 15, 2017, Sydney was excited because she planned to meet someone she had been chatting with on a phone app. This person was Bailey Boswell, who had spoken kindly to her and suggested they meet in person. Sydney told her friends she felt good about the meeting and hoped the night would be fun. No one imagined the danger that would follow. Sydney met Bailey that night, and for a short moment, everything seemed normal. Sydney even sent messages to her friends saying she was okay. But after that evening, Sydney did not return home. She did not show up for work the next day, and she did not answer her phone. Her family became worried very quickly because Sydney was not someone who disappeared without telling anyone. Her parents called the police, and officers began a search. They checked her phone activity, her last known locations, and all the people she had spoken to before she went missing. As the search grew larger, police learned something very important. Bailey Boswell was not alone. She lived with a man named Aubrey Trail, and both had been with Sydney before she disappeared. Police used phone records, store cameras, and car information to follow the movements of Bailey and Trail on the night Sydney vanished. The more they looked, the more they saw that the two had been traveling around the area in ways that did not match their stories. Bailey and Trail later released videos online saying they were being treated unfairly, but the evidence kept pointing toward them. 2 weeks after Sydney disappeared, officers found her remains in several parts of rural Nebraska. These discoveries were heartbreaking for her family and for everyone who had been hoping she would come home safely. The investigation showed that Sydney had been harmed on the night of November 15th and that the two people she trusted enough to meet had ended her life. Trail later gave different stories about what happened, but none of them changed the fact that Sydney had been killed and her remains left in different places. The case went to court, and the trials were long and emotional. Sydney's family sat through the evidence, hoping for justice. In 2019, a jury found Aubrey Trail guilty of first-degree murder, conspiracy, and improper disposal of remains. In 2021, a panel of judges gave Trail the death sentence, making him one of the few people in Nebraska to receive that punishment. Bailey Boswell went to trial later. In 2020, she was also found guilty of first-degree murder, conspiracy, and improper disposal of remains. In her separate sentencing hearing, judges decided she would spend life in prison. In 2024, the highest court in Nebraska reviewed her case and confirmed her conviction and sentence. Just before we move on to the next case, please support my channel by liking this video and subscribing. This kind gesture from you would help my channel grow. Thank you very much. Case 2. Ingrid Line worked as a nurse and loved her 3 daughters deeply. In early April 2016, Ingrid agreed to go on a first date with a man named John Robert Charlton. The two had met online and had been talking for about a month, and they decided to attend a baseball game together at Safeco Field on April 8, 2016. It was meant to be a normal night out, the kind many adults hope will lead to a new friendship or even something more. Ingrid's close friends knew she was excited about this simple step in her life. When Ingrid did not return home that night and did not respond to messages the next morning, people who loved her immediately felt worried. On April 9, 2016, her ex-husband arrived at her home to bring their daughters back, but Ingrid was nowhere to be found. This set off a wave of concern because Ingrid was always responsible and always kept in contact. Later that same day, a homeowner in Seattle made a shocking and painful discovery. Several body parts were placed inside plastic bags in a recycling bin near their home. Police later confirmed these remains belonged to Ingrid. From that moment, the entire community felt the weight of the loss. Police quickly searched Ingrid's home to understand what had happened. Inside, investigators found a pruning saw that had been recently used, along with plastic garbage bags that matched the ones holding the remains. They also found blood and human tissue in the bathroom drain. pointing to what had occurred inside the house. These findings created a clearer picture of when and where Ingrid lost her life. The evidence showed that the crime had taken place soon after she returned home from the date. These details were confirmed in public reports and later used in court. By April 11, 2016, police had arrested the man she had gone out with, John Robert Charlton. He was taken into custody and questioned about the night with Ingrid. During interviews, Charlton claimed he had been too intoxicated to remember clearly, but investigators continued building the case. He was formally charged with first-degree murder and theft of Ingrid's vehicle, which he had used to leave the area after the crime. The charges reflected the seriousness of the case and the detailed evidence found inside Ingrid's home. As the legal process continued, Ingrid's family faced unimaginable grief. Her friends shared memories of her kindness, her dedication to her daughters, and her joyful personality. The story spread across the nation because it touched something deeply human. The idea that a simple date, something many people do without fear, could end in such a painful and tragic way. People everywhere began to talk about safety, online dating, and the importance of staying alert when meeting new people. In October 2017, Charlton pled guilty to murdering Ingrid. His plea agreement meant the court could move forward with sentencing. On January 5, 2018, he received a punishment of 27 years and 9 months in prison, which was the maximum allowed under the sentencing guidelines for his charges. During the hearing, Ingrid's family members spoke about their loss, describing how much she meant to them and how her daughters would grow up without their mother. Case 3. Robin West, Joanne Brown, and Sarah Butler were 3 women from New Jersey whose lives were cut short in a series of attacks that took place between August and November 2016. Robin was 19, Joanne was 33, and Sarah was 20. Each woman had her own hopes, families, friendships, and plans for the future. Their stories became linked only because of the actions of one man, Khalil Wheeler Weaver, who used dating apps, including Tagged, to contact and lure them during those months. A 4th woman survived an attack and later helped investigators understand how the crimes were carried out. As police began reviewing each case, they noticed clear connections. All 3 victims had been contacted by Wheeler Weaver through online messages. Prosecutors later explained that he used these apps to arrange private meetings. He often offered money in exchange for spending time together. Once alone with the women, he attacked them. Evidence showed that he chose meeting spots where the victims would be isolated and unable to get help. The women disappeared at different times, and their bodies were found at different locations, with Sarah Butler's remains discovered in Eagle Rock Reservation in West Orange. For their families, these discoveries brought heartbreak and long-lasting grief. Investigators worked carefully to bring together every piece of information they could find. Digital evidence became one of the strongest tools in the case. Police collected phone records, app messages, location data, and movement patterns that placed Wheeler Weaver in the same areas as the victims during the exact times they went missing. They also spoke to people who knew the victims and reviewed any messages exchanged with him. The surviving woman shared her story with detectives and described how Wheeler Weaver contacted her, offered money, and tried to harm her. Her bravery helped police create a clear picture of his behavior. She also worked with officers in a controlled online conversation that helped confirm his identity and methods. When the case reached trial in December 2019, prosecutors presented a detailed timeline showing each step Wheeler Weaver took. They explained how he used dating platforms to approach his victims and how his movements matched the paths of Robin, Joanne, and Sarah. They described how each victim was found and how the digital information connected all the cases. The court listened to testimony about the surviving woman's experience, which supported the rest of the evidence. After reviewing everything, the jury found Wheeler Weaver guilty of 11 charges, including 3 counts of murder, attempted murder, kidnapping, aggravated sexual assault, and desecration of human remains. In October 2021, Wheeler Weaver was sentenced to 160 years in prison. The sentence ensured that Wheeler Weaver would never be released. Before we advance to the next case, if you've found this video interesting so far, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. Thanks for your support. Case 4. Sade Robinson, a 19-year-old student from Milwaukee who was excited about life and known for her warm, friendly spirit. On April 1, 2024, she went out for a first date with a man named Maxwell Anderson. The two had connected earlier, and this was their first time spending an evening together in person. They were last seen at the Twisted Fisherman restaurant, where Sade shared a meal and conversation, unaware that this night would be the last time anyone would see her alive. Her friends knew she had plans and dreams, and she looked forward to a simple evening in the city. The next day, April 2nd, Sade did not return home. Loved ones grew worried when she stopped answering her phone. Later that same day, someone walking through Warnemont Park made a discovery that brought fear and sadness across Milwaukee: a human leg near the shoreline. After testing, officials confirmed the leg belonged to Sade. This finding immediately changed the case from a missing person alert to a homicide investigation. Police searched for clues, reviewed video footage, and retraced Sade's steps from the night before. Her last known company had been Anderson, making him a key figure in the investigation. As officers continued working, more remains were found across different parts of Milwaukee County. Over time, an arm was discovered far from the first location, and another part washed up near Waukegan, Illinois. Each new finding deepened the grief of the community because it painted a clearer picture of how violent the crime had been. Reports later mentioned that some remains had still not been recovered. Throughout these days, the timeline of Sade's final hours became more visible. Cell phone records, camera footage, and evidence from several scenes brought attention back to Anderson. Anderson was arrested on April 4, 2024. He was charged with first-degree intentional homicide, mutilating a corpse, hiding a corpse, arson, and other related offenses. Prosecutors explained that they believed the murder happened after the date and that Anderson tried to cover up the crime. The early reports did not reveal every detail, but the charges showed how serious the case had become. Sade's family watched the investigation closely, hoping for answers and justice for the daughter they loved so much. By the time the case reached trial, investigators had built a strong timeline using phone data, location records, and video clips. These pieces showed where Anderson traveled in the hours following the date. They also showed movements that placed him at spots connected to the discoveries of Sade's remains. During the court, the prosecutors explained that the evidence showed a pattern of actions that could not be ignored. The trial drew local and national attention because the case involved a young woman meeting someone for the first time, something many people do without fear. On June 6, 2025, a jury found Anderson guilty on all major charges, including intentional homicide. The verdict brought a mixture of relief and heartbreak. Sade's family spoke about her bright future and the pain of losing her in such a violent way. Community members who had followed the case also felt the weight of the moment, knowing that the trial had brought truth into the open. Anderson later returned to court for sentencing. On August 1, 2025, a judge sentenced him to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Case 5. Anthony Walgate, Gabriel Cavari, Daniel Whitworth, and Jack Taylor were 4 young men who lived hopeful lives in East London. Each of them had dreams, families who loved them, and futures they were looking forward to. Their lives were taken between 2014 and 2015, during a period lasting about 16 months, in a case that later shocked the entire United Kingdom. All 4 men met the same person through a dating app, and they trusted that they were meeting someone who meant no harm. None of them knew that the person they were meeting was Stephen Port, who would be responsible for ending their lives. The first young man was Anthony Walgate, a 23-year-old fashion student. In June 2014, Anthony went to meet Port at his flat in Barking, East London. While he was there, Port gave him a strong drug called GHB, which can make a person unable to stay awake or protect themselves. Anthony did not survive. Instead of telling the truth, Port placed Anthony outside the building and called emergency services with a false story. He changed his explanation several times when the police asked questions. Because of these misleading statements, the early investigation became confusing, and officers were not yet aware that something much larger was happening. 2 months later, in August 2014, Gabriel Kovari, who was 22, moved to London from Slovakia. He was staying close to Port's home and met him through the same dating app. Gabriel was friendly and hopeful about starting a new life in England, but after spending time with Port, Gabriel was found dead near a churchyard not far from Port's flat. Police investigated, but they had not yet connected his death to Anthony's. People in the community were worried, but the connection between the deaths had not been made. Only 3 weeks after Gabriel's death, in September 2014, Daniel Whitworth, a 21-year-old chef, was also found dead in the same churchyard area. Daniel had also met Port online. Port gave him GHB as he had with the others. Port attempted to mislead investigators by placing a note near Daniel, trying to make it seem like Daniel had caused harm to himself. This note was later proven to be false. Even though the two deaths happened close together in the same location, police still did not link them. Almost 1 year passed before the fourth young man, Jack Taylor, met Port. Jack was 25 and worked as a forklift driver. He was very close to his family and often spent time with them. In September 2015, Jack met Port near the Barking train station. Port gave him GHB, and Jack did not survive. His body was later found near the same churchyard where Gabriel and Daniel had been discovered. Jack's family immediately noticed that something felt wrong and demanded that the police look deeper. Their strong and persistent efforts pushed investigators to review earlier cases with more care. As detectives checked phone records, camera footage, and location data, they began to see a clear pattern. All 4 deaths involved contact with Port shortly before the men died, and all involved the same drug. In late 2015, this led to Port's arrest. He was charged with 4 murders, as well as other crimes involving drugging and harming men he met online. The trial took place in November 2016. During the trial, the court heard about the dating app messages, the visits to Port's flat, the false explanations he gave, and the steps he took to mislead the police. After reviewing the evidence, the jury found Port guilty of the murders of Anthony Walgate, Gabriel Kovari, Daniel Whitworth, and Jack Taylor. The judge gave Port a whole life order, meaning he will stay in prison for the rest of his life with no chance of release. Case 6. Grace Mullane was a 22-year-old student from England who loved travel, photography, and new experiences. In late 2018, she was backpacking through New Zealand as part of a year-long journey. On December 1, 2018, Grace agreed to meet a man she had matched with on Tinder. They met in Auckland's city center, visited several locations together, and were later seen entering a hotel where the man was staying. Grace never walked out of that building alive. The man she met was Jesse Kempson, a 26-year-old who lived in Auckland at the time. Security footage later showed Grace and Kempson talking and walking together before going up to his room. What happened next became the focus of an international investigation. Grace was harmed through pressure applied to her neck, leading to her death. Instead of seeking help, Kempson attempted to hide what he had done. Police later found that he searched for ways to cover his actions and moved Grace's body to a remote area west of the city. When Grace did not respond to birthday messages from her family, concern grew quickly. She had stayed in close contact during her trip, and silence was unlike her. On December 4, 2018, her parents learned she was missing, and New Zealand police launched a search that gained worldwide attention. Officers reviewed digital activity, bank records, and security camera footage. Every clue pointed back to the man she met on Tinder. As the investigation tightened, Kempson's online messages and movements over the following days played a major role in understanding the timeline of events. Police arrested Kempson shortly after naming him a suspect. Officers questioned him while continuing the search for Grace. On December 9, 2018, police found her body in the Waitakere Ranges, a forested area outside Auckland. Her death was confirmed as a homicide, and the case moved into the courtroom. During the trial, prosecutors showed messages, video recordings, and other evidence that demonstrated how the events unfolded. They explained that Grace's death was not an accident, but was caused by deliberate force. In November 2019, after reviewing all the evidence and hearing from experts, a New Zealand jury found Kempson guilty of murder. The judge later gave him a life sentence with a minimum of 17 years before he could seek parole. Case 7. Nicole Lovell loved music, chatting online, and making new friends. She had gone through serious medical struggles as a child, including a liver transplant and long hospital stays, but she pushed through with determination. To her family, Nicole was strong, cheerful, and hopeful. In January 2016, she began communicating with an older boy through a phone app. She believed she was forming a friendship, and she trusted the messages she received. What began as an online conversation slowly drew her into a dangerous situation that she did not understand. As days passed, Nicole kept her chats quiet, thinking they were harmless. The boy messaging her was David Eisenhower, a freshman at Virginia Tech. According to court records, Eisenhower and Nicole had been in contact through the app Kik. Investigators later learned that Eisenhower worried their communication could affect his reputation, so he tried to keep it hidden. Nicole, not realizing the danger, believed she was simply meeting someone she cared about. In the early hours of January 27, 2016, she quietly climbed out of her bedroom window. She carried only her phone and a blanket, planning to meet Eisenhower nearby. That moment marked the beginning of a case that would shake Virginia and draw national attention. When Nicole's family woke up and saw she was missing, panic spread instantly. Police officers, volunteers, and neighbors joined the search. Flyers were printed, messages circulated across social media, and investigators moved quickly to track Nicole's steps. As they examined her phone activity and online history, the name David Eisenhower emerged again and again. He initially denied knowing her, but officers noticed inconsistencies in his statements. As they gathered evidence, another person became connected to the case, Natalie Keepers, a fellow Virginia Tech student. Investigators soon learned that Eisenhower and Keepers had been in contact before Nicole disappeared, discussing plans and possible ways to avoid detection. On January 30, 2016, 3 days after Nicole vanished, investigators found her body near a roadside in Surry County, North Carolina, just over the state border. Court testimony later revealed that Nicole had been stabbed multiple times. The discovery confirmed the fears of her family and community. With physical evidence, digital communications, and witness statements, investigators traced the events of that night directly to Eisenhower and Keepers. Phone records, text messages, and surveillance information gave authorities a clear picture of what had happened. During the trial, prosecutors explained that Eisenhower met Nicole and used her trust to lure her away from her home. Evidence showed that he planned the act, took her to a separate location, and ended her life. Keepers helped him plan and also helped conceal the body afterward. Testimony revealed detailed discussions between the two college students about how Eisenhower could avoid responsibility and how to handle the aftermath. These communications were introduced in court, including messages that revealed their attempts to plan ahead. In 2018, after reviewing the evidence, a judge found Eisenhower guilty of first-degree murder, abduction, and concealing a body. The court sentenced him to 50 years in prison, a punishment that reflected the seriousness of his actions and the impact on Nicole's family and the community. He received 60 years for murder, 10 years for abduction, and 5 years for concealment, but with portions suspended, resulting in 50 years of active time. Keepers was also found guilty of being an accessory before the fact and for helping afterward, receiving a sentence of 40 years to serve, with additional suspended time. Case 8. Samantha Stewart was known for her warm personality and dedication to helping others. On July 17, 2018, her family grew worried when she stopped answering calls. Police visited her home and found Samantha dead, showing clear signs of a violent attack. Almost immediately, investigators began searching for the last person she had been in contact with, and records pointed to someone she had recently matched with through the dating app Tinder. That person was Daniel Drayton, a man whose actions in multiple states would soon reveal a dangerous pattern. Once Samantha's death became a homicide investigation, detectives collected phone records, app messages, and travel information. They learned that Drayton had used Samantha's credit card after leaving New York and that he had purchased a one-way airline ticket to California. These details showed not only that he had left the state quickly, but that he was likely trying to avoid arrest. Meanwhile, another urgent call came from Los Angeles. A woman had reported being attacked and held inside a hotel room. When police arrived on July 24, 2018, they found Drayton inside with the woman who had been sexually assaulted but was still alive. This rescue allowed officers to take Drayton into custody immediately. The arrest in Los Angeles became a major development. Investigators from New York and California began sharing information, and officials soon confirmed that Drayton was connected to both the assault in Los Angeles and Samantha Stewart's death in Queens. According to police and prosecutors, Drayton had used dating apps, ride services, and social platforms to meet women. They described him as someone who used these interactions to gain trust before harming his victims. The surviving woman's detailed account of how he contacted her through online platforms matched what detectives had already discovered in Samantha's case. As questioning continued, Drayton reportedly told investigators that he had harmed or killed additional victims in Connecticut, the Bronx, Suffolk County, Queens, and possibly California. These claims drew national attention, but law enforcement agencies made one important clarification. Although Drayton said he was responsible for multiple murders, police had not confirmed independent evidence linking him to those additional deaths. Instead, officers focused on the crimes they could clearly verify: Samantha's murder in New York and the violent assault of the woman rescued in Los Angeles. In April 2022, a Queens County grand jury indicted Drayton for Samantha Stewart's murder. The charges included murder in the second degree, sexual misconduct, theft, and other related offenses. Prosecutors explained that Samantha had been targeted through a dating app and that her death was the result of a deliberate and violent attack. Meanwhile, Drayton also faced charges in California for attempted murder, sexual assault, and false imprisonment connected to the hotel room incident. These parallel cases showed how dangerous his actions were and how far he had traveled in a short period of time. Investigators credited the fast spread of information across states for preventing more harm. The Los Angeles officers who rescued the surviving woman provided crucial details that aligned with evidence from Queens. The combined work of detectives, forensic teams, and digital investigators helped build a timeline of Drayton's movements from New York to California. These records strengthened the case against him and showed how quickly he moved after Samantha's death. Drayton was sentenced to 25 years to life in prison for Stewart's murder. Case 9. Francia Ruth Ibarra lived in León, Guanajuato, Mexico. She enjoyed spending time with friends, exploring new places, and sharing pieces of her life on social media. In late 2016, she began speaking with a man she met on Tinder named Emmanuel Delaney Valdez Bocanegra. The messages started casually, but soon the two began meeting in person. Ruth kept the relationship quiet because Bocanegra did not want to meet her friends or family. He preferred private conversations, private visits, and a relationship that stayed out of sight. Even though those actions raised concerns among people close to Ruth, she felt she was forming a personal connection. On December 3, 2016, she went to visit him at his apartment. That day would become the final time anyone saw her alive. When Ruth did not arrive home, her friends quickly sensed something was very wrong. She had planned to meet them later, but she never showed up. Her phone stopped responding, and messages went unread. Friends began searching for her, retracing her steps from that morning. Everything pointed back to the same place, Bocanegra's apartment. Friends told authorities that Ruth had been meeting him secretly and was last known to be heading in his direction. As hours turned into days, concern grew deeper. Because Ruth was known to communicate regularly, her silence meant something serious had happened. Police opened a missing person investigation and went to question Bocanegra. According to early reports, his explanations did not match what investigators already knew from Ruth's friends. Officers were granted access to his apartment, and during the search, they made a discovery that changed the case completely. On the balcony of the residence, police found several black bags. Inside those bags were human bones. Next to the bags were containers that held strong chemical substances, including caustic soda and hydrochloric acid. These materials can break down human remains, and investigators immediately secured the area. The discovery was so severe that the investigation shifted from a missing person case to a homicide case in a matter of minutes. DNA testing later confirmed that the remains found in the bags were Ruth's. Reports also stated that police located clothing belonging to her inside the apartment. With this evidence, investigators began reconstructing her final hours. They concluded that Ruth had gone to the apartment believing she would spend time with Bocanegra. Instead, she was harmed soon after arriving. Afterward, an attempt was made to destroy evidence using chemicals and to hide her remains in bags on the balcony. The investigation pointed strongly to Bocanegra, and he became the prime suspect. As news of the case spread throughout Mexico, outrage grew. Many people used social media to share images of Ruth, express their grief, and warn others about the risks of meeting strangers through apps. The case also drew attention because the suspect attempted to leave the city after the crime. Authorities located and arrested him in Mexico City. His capture reassured many who feared he might escape, but it also raised difficult questions about why the events had happened and how Ruth had been placed in danger. Public records accessible through media archives do not show the final result of the legal proceedings. Reports confirm the arrest, the evidence found in the apartment, and the link to Ruth through DNA testing, but details about a completed trial or sentencing are not widely available. Because of this, the focus of most coverage has remained on the events leading up to Ruth's disappearance, the discovery of her remains, and the lessons that followed. Case 10. Ashlyn Black was a 25-year-old woman from Utah who enjoyed spending time with friends, exploring new places, and meeting new people. On the night of May 23, 2020, she agreed to meet a man named Ethan Hunsaker after matching with him on Tinder. They planned a normal evening, the kind many young adults experience. They met at a bar in Layton, talked for a while, and later went back to Hunsaker's home. Nothing about the night suggested danger. Ashlyn had no reason to believe she was walking into harm. But within hours, the meeting would turn into a case that shocked the entire state. In the early morning hours of May 24, 2020, at 3:19 a.m., Layton police received a call from Hunsaker himself. During the call, he told the dispatcher that he had killed the woman who came home with him. When officers arrived, they found Ashlyn inside the house with several stab wounds, and they also learned that she had been choked. Investigators later stated that she was asleep at the time of the attack. Nothing in their review of the night showed that Ashlyn had done anything to provoke harm. Officials described the assault as sudden and without warning. Police immediately took Hunsaker into custody. In their reports, they noted that he offered no clear reason for what he had done. They also recorded statements showing that Hunsaker had been dealing with mental health struggles, including thoughts of harming himself and others. Still, investigators made it clear that nothing in his background excused the violence. Ashlyn's family and friends were left with overwhelming grief. Her loved ones described her as bright, kind, and full of life. The sudden nature of her death made the loss even harder to understand. As the case moved into the court system, Prosecutors reviewed the evidence collected at the home. Police interviews, crime scene findings, and Hunsaker's own statements helped build the timeline of events. The district attorney made it clear that Ashlyn was an innocent victim who trusted someone she had only just met. The court learned that the two had spent only a short time together before the attack. There had been no argument, no warning signs, and no struggle leading up to it. Everything pointed to an unprovoked and tragic act of violence. On June 29, 2021, Hunsaker entered a plea of guilty but mentally ill to murder. During the hearing, Ashlyn's family members spoke about their daughter and sister. They talked about the pain of losing her so suddenly and the deep sadness that followed. Their statements helped the court understand the full emotional weight of the case. The final sentencing took place on February 22, 2022. The judge ordered that Hunsaker be sent first to the Utah State Hospital for mental health treatment. After doctors determine that he no longer needs treatment, he will be transferred to the Utah State Prison System. His sentence is 15 years to life. Case 11. Katie Locke, a 23-year-old history teacher from Hertfordshire, England. She loved her work, cared for her students, and stayed close to her family. Katie had a warm personality that made people feel safe talking to her. In December 2015, she matched with a man named Carl Langdell on the dating website Plenty of Fish. He seemed friendly and polite in their messages, and Katie felt hopeful that their first date might be the start of something nice. She did not know that Langdell was hiding dark thoughts and a violent past that she could not see through the screen. Katie agreed to meet Langdell at Theobald's Park de Vere Hotel in Broxbourne. This hotel was quiet, surrounded by trees, and often used for events. Katie went there believing she was meeting someone who simply wanted to spend time with her. But as the night went on, things took a frightening turn. Inside the hotel room, Langdell attacked Katie. The details were later confirmed in court through his own confession. Katie did not survive the attack. She had gone on what she thought would be a normal date, but it ended in a way that devastated her family and shocked the public. When Katie did not return home, concern grew quickly. Her family worried, and police were called. The next morning, hotel staff discovered her body inside the room. Investigators soon learned she had arrived there with Langdell the night before. Within hours, he became the main suspect. Police arrested him soon after and began questioning him. During the investigation, Langdell admitted that he had killed Katie. This confession became a major part of the case. But the story did not end there. As investigators looked deeper, they learned something deeply troubling. Earlier in 2015, Langdell had told mental health workers that he wanted to harm a woman. He even described violent ideas about attacking someone. These statements were documented, but they had not been shared widely enough to warn people like Katie. She had no way of knowing she was meeting someone who had already spoken about wanting to cause harm. Katie's death shook the community. People who knew her talked about her kindness, her gentle nature, and her passion for teaching. Students remembered how she made learning fun and always encouraged them to try their best. Her family shared stories about her love for history and her bright smile. The school where she worked held memorial events to honor her life. Many people felt heartbroken that someone so young and full of promise had been taken so suddenly. In January 2016, Langdell appeared in court. He pleaded guilty to murder. The judge reviewed everything in the case: the confession, the earlier warnings he had given mental health staff, and the way he had used a dating website to hide his intentions. Because of the seriousness of the crime and the danger Langdell posed, the judge gave him a life sentence with a minimum of 26 years before he can even be considered for release. The court stated that he was a threat to the public and could not be trusted to live freely. Katie's family spoke during the sentencing, describing the pain they felt and the bright future Katie had been building. Case 12. Wariana Wright traveled to the Gold Coast in Australia in August 2014 to attend a wedding and enjoy a short vacation. Wariana was kind, full of life, and excited to spend time in a new city. While she was there, she used Tinder and matched with a man named Gable Tosti. They agreed to meet on the night of August 7, 2014, hoping to have a relaxed and friendly evening together. She did not know that this simple meeting would lead to a very frightening and tragic event. That evening, Wariena and Tosti met and later went to his high-rise apartment. At first, things seemed normal. They talked, had drinks, and spent time together. But after some time, the mood in the apartment changed. The two began arguing, their voices became louder, and the argument grew more intense. What makes this case unique is that much of the disagreement was recorded because Tosti had turned on the audio recorder on his phone. This recording later became a central part of the investigation and the court case. During the argument, Wariena sounded scared. She asked Tosti to let her leave, but the situation became more stressful. At one point, the audio captured noises that suggested a physical struggle. Court reports later explained that Tosti restrained her during the argument. These details were important because they showed the fear Wariena felt inside the apartment. The recording also captured Tosti's voice giving sharp instructions while Wariena was clearly distressed. As the situation escalated, Tosti forced Wariena outside onto the 14th floor balcony of his apartment. The audio recording captured the sound of the sliding door closing as she was locked outside. Being on a high balcony in the middle of the night, frightened and alone, left Wariena with very few options. She cried out for help, called for someone to assist her, and tried her best to find a safe way back inside or away from danger. With no way to return through the locked door, Wariena attempted to move from Tosti's balcony to the one next door. This required climbing across a narrow edge with a long drop below. She was trying desperately to escape the frightening situation she had been placed in, but during this attempt, she lost her balance. At around 2 a.m. on August 8, 2014, Wariena fell from the balcony to the ground below. She died instantly. Her fall shocked the people in the building, and emergency services were called right away. When police began their investigation, they found the audio recording on Tosti's phone. This recording helped them understand what happened inside the apartment before Wariena fell. The recording revealed Wariena's fear, the argument, the physical struggle, and the moment Tosti locked her outside. It also captured Tosti speaking calmly at times, even while the situation around him was frightening and dangerous. These details sparked wide public discussion about safety, dating apps, and high-rise buildings. Police arrested Tosti and charged him with murder and manslaughter. The trial began in 2016, 2 years after Wariena's death. During the trial, the jury listened to the audio recording many times. They examined every part of it carefully. The court had to decide whether Tosti's actions directly caused Wariena's fall, or whether she fell while trying to escape the balcony on her own, even though she had been placed in that dangerous position. In October 2016, the jury reached a decision. Tosti was found not guilty of murder and not guilty of manslaughter. The court ruled that although his actions were aggressive and frightening, he did not physically push Wariena off the balcony. The verdict caused strong reactions among people who followed the case. Many felt sad that Wariena had been so frightened and had tried so hard to escape before falling. Case 13. Ashley Hall, a 17-year-old from County Durham in England who trusted the wrong person at the wrong time. In October 2009, Ashley began chatting on Facebook with someone who said he was a 19-year-old boy named Peter Cartwright. His messages sounded friendly. He acted like a normal teenager, and he made Ashley feel as though he understood her. What she did not know was that the person behind the screen was not a teenager at all. It was a 33-year-old man named Peter Chapman using a fake name and fake photos to trick young girls into trusting him. Chapman spent days sending messages that made the conversation seem safe. Eventually, he asked Ashley if she wanted to meet in person. To her, it felt like a simple chance to meet someone new. She told her family she was visiting a friend and then went to meet this person she believed was Peter Cartwright. When she stepped into Chapman's car, she had no idea she was entering the hands of a man who had planned this meeting from the start. Chapman had created this false identity so he could hide who he really was. Ashley trusted the person she thought he was, not knowing the danger she faced. After Ashley got into the car, Chapman kidnapped her. In the hours that followed, he assaulted her and ended her life. The next day, her body was found near a field in Sedgefield. When police questioned Chapman about a different matter, he eventually admitted that he had taken Ashley and told officers where they could find her. Investigators connected the online messages to Chapman, proving that he had been pretending to be a teenage boy to lure Ashley into meeting him. They also discovered that Chapman had used several fake accounts to contact young girls online, and this was not the first time he had tried to hide his true identity. The news of Ashley's murder spread across the entire United Kingdom. People were shocked that a grown man had been able to pretend to be a teenager online without being noticed. Even more troubling, Chapman had a history of crimes and was supposed to be monitored as a registered offender. Many questioned how someone with his background had been able to create profiles, speak to young people, and plan meetings without anyone noticing. Ashley's case made families, schools, and safety experts rethink how young people use the internet and how strangers can hide behind friendly messages. In March 2010, Chapman was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum of 35 years before he could even be considered for release. In court, officials described his actions as planned and deliberate. They explained how he created the fake profile, used false photos, and pretended to be someone he was not to trap his victim. Ashley's family spoke about her loving nature, her dreams, and the bright future she should have had. Their words reminded everyone that Ashley was not just a name in a headline. She was a daughter, a friend, and a young girl who trusted what she believed was a safe conversation with someone her age. After the case ended, schools and community groups across the country began using Ashley's story strictly for educational purposes to warn other young people about the hidden dangers of talking to strangers online. If you enjoyed watching this true crime documentary, please subscribe to my channel. I create and post interesting true crime videos daily on the channel. Thank you for watching.